You are listening to the Breaktime Tech Talks podcast, a bite-sized tech podcast for busy developers, where we'll briefly cover technical topics, news snippets, and more in short time blocks. I'm your host, Jennifer Reif, an avid developer and problem solver with special interest in data, learning, and all things technology. Happy 2026, everyone, and welcome back to Breaktime Tech Talks in the new year. I'm really excited to begin another year with you, and I'm hoping to build on what I've learned, as well as explore some new things. So many things are already kicking off, even at the beginning of the year, so without further ado, let me share what's going on. First off, in preparation for some upcoming presentations and demos, there's a few different things I'm starting to tackle already. First is working on a full Goodreads dataset load. I've worked with small sample datasets of this in the past and just had never gone back and loaded the full dataset in, which includes somewhere over 2 million books and related reviews, authors, publishers, works, users, and etc. I'm working on loading that in. I'm also working on generating embeddings with Ollama. So Ollama models are traditionally local models, some open source models, and things like that. And I wanted to explore more with the Ollama models. I am testing that out. I've run into a few little hiccups along the way, and I'll share those in just a second, but that is the progress I'm doing right now. And the reason I am doing this is so that I can work on some more business-heavy applications, as well as maybe things like agentic systems and workflows and things with this data set. So we'll see where 2026 takes me on this. Now, one of the roadblocks that I came across when dealing with Ollama and loading embeddings and just generating a lot of data like this, putting it into Neo4j, was that there is a library of GenAI procedures for Neo4j. And there's yet another new migration. So they've upgraded and added some new procedures, fixed some things, made the implementations a little bit nicer. But that means that all your syntax and everything has to change again. So in 2025.11.2, the version of the database as well as Cypher takes advantage of the new vector data type by updating the procedures and functions that save the embedding to the database. In this case, I had mentioned a couple of weeks ago that there's a new vector type in Neo4j to support the vector format that everyone is storing in databases now, where you have a list of integers or list of floats that represent the semantic value of whatever it is you're trying to encode, right? Well, with this, to support this new vector type, we have now procedures that when you generate the embedding, you can save that value, that list of floats or whatever, as a vector data type rather than the list of floats or list of integers that it was. It would chew up more space inside the database. We have a new vector type. We're taking advantage of that new storage to make this process more efficient. So these new procedures and functions, the old ones are still out there. They will be deprecated, but they are still available on some of the older previous versions of all of this stuff. And they're not completely gone from the library yet. They're still sitting out there, but they are somewhat deprecated in favor of these new procedures. However, neither of these two procedures within Cypher support Ollama just yet. So you have the GenAI procedures, and you've got now a couple of different versions of those, but neither of them support Ollama yet. So therefore, you have to use the awesome procedures on Cypher, or APOC library with Neo4j, and use a couple of the machine learning procedures from that library in order to generate your embeddings with Ollama. I came in and looked at my script. I was like, oh, syntax has definitely changed. I went out and looked at it. I'm like, oh, it's actually changed again. I'll go out and fix all this stuff. And then come to find out as I'm trying to hack my way through this with the bleeding edge syntax that, hey, Ollama isn't supported. So therefore I have to roll back not only to the previous version of the procedure, but actually go out to the APOC utility library and use a procedure that's there. Those still work. I'm still trying to get the data to load right now. It's a little bit sluggish. I don't know if it's my machine or my syntax is just not as efficient as I'd like it to be, but it is working. And remember that it's millions of entities that it's trying to generate embeddings for and save those. That is a work in progress. And we will see, hopefully, the Ollama support for these new GenAI procedures will be coming very soon. It's just not quite there yet. Okay, the other things for charging into 2026. I do have several events and commitments that are already lined up for the first half of 2026. In fact, I have deadlines all the way up through May as of right now. I'm still catching up on some communications and missed content that happened over the end of 2025 into 2026, holiday season, if you will. I did take some time to decompress, some baking and some reading of a variety of different books. I was really excited to do some of those things over the break. I am determining the balance of content intake versus content production. That is still something that I feel like shifts constantly for me. I've mentioned this before on this podcast that there's so much information coming at us now and so much to learn and so much that I feel like I'm constantly behind on, that it's really hard to decide how to spend your, not even just your working hours, but your day, your awake hours of how much content can I soak in a day and how much can I produce based on what I've learned from that. 2025 to me felt like it was a little bit out of balance on the content creation phase. I felt like I tried to learn, tried to produce, and didn't really massively outdo myself on the content creation phase. In fact, I really was a little bit bummed that I didn't have more time to do technical blogs because that's something I really enjoy. But I also wanted to explore tech videos and do more with this podcast, build more applications and sample code and things like that. And I just didn't have a chance to do it all. So I spent a lot of my time creating applications and slides for presentations, which was awesome. But for 2026, I'd really like to see more focus on building applications, doing some tech blogging again, online training and course materials, and maybe some more podcast things, guesting and hosting, both sides of the coin there. The content pieces for this week, there were a couple that were recommended to me from a variety of different people. And so I had a chance to sit down and listen in on some of those. I'll share what I've heard. And actually, they're both from the same source, although they were recommended to me by two different people. So both of them are from Lenny's podcast, and there's YouTube videos as well as just the podcast that you can find on regular podcasting platforms. But the first one is The Leadership Skill AI Can't Replace. This is a podcast interview with Molly Graham, and they go into a lot of different details on career, learning, the constant change that's going on, not just in tech industry, but in AI. And the thing that continues to be important that Molly talks about is, even through AI, is being a good learner and being curious. Both Lenny and Molly talk a little bit about this, how no matter what the industry throws at us in the next few weeks, days, months, years, whatever it is, that being a good learner and being curious and being willing to dedicate time to come up to speed on something and help people out is still going to be a valuable skill in the long run. The other podcast episode that I listened to was Lenny's podcast as well, but this is an interview with Ethan Smith, and the title is The Ultimate Guide to AEO, How to Get ChatGPT to Recommend Your Product. The biggest thing that they talk about in this is that there are two new terms that have surfaced. You may have heard of SEO, and that is search engine optimization. Well, now there's these new terms that have come out called AEO, answer engine optimization, and generative engine optimization, GEO. So you have AEO and GEO. Both of those are basically the same thing, and both people on the podcast, Ethan and Lenny, both talk about this as being, they are the same thing. It's just two different ways to basically use different words for the same thing. They go into details on how to do it and the various techniques of AEO and what that's going to mean for the future of companies like Google and ChatGPT and just everyone else trying to advertise and promote their products through these different interfaces. I found both of these conversations really interesting. The thing that I liked here is they go into detail in certain aspects, but it's not anything that you can't follow. And the conversation rolls really easily from one thing to the next. It doesn't feel stilted or kind of cobbled together of different building blocks. There's lots of a variety of questions, even on the same topic. They approach it from different angles. So even if it's not directly something you're into, having the pieces put together for you, no matter what angle you're coming from, I think is really fascinating and kept my attention long-term throughout both of these podcast episodes. They are relatively long. They're about an hour long a piece. If you want to speed it up or just skip around or listen to the whole thing, that's totally up to you. But I found these really interesting and relevant for the day-to-day life that we're living in right now. I think it's easy to get stuck in a rut and try to soak up all the content that's popping up everywhere, but I'm trying to find a better balance of keeping up and still building/producing things. I hope you had a wonderful and safe end of 2025 into the beginning of 2026. But if not, I'm wishing you many improvements throughout 2026. As always, thanks for listening and happy coding.